Alrighty, we are looking at lists in Python for this third lesson on our lists unit. We're going to look at how to remove items from a list or delete items from a list. In the first two videos, we saw how to create a list, and then we saw how to add things to a list or how to edit things inside of a list. Now we're going to be learning these three new commands in Python for how to take things out of a list. It's very similar to append and insert, where they do very similar things, but just slightly different, and you might want to use these in different situations depending on what you're doing. We're going to start with delete because it's sort of I don't know, it seems kind of like the most basic one, but it's also kind of the weirdest syntax when it comes down to it. Okay, a couple things that I want to mention just because I don't know if I've been super clear with the vocabulary in the first two lessons. We have items in your list and the indexes of your list, or the indices. The items in your list are literally the things in your list, right? So this item over here is 1. It's the value 1, right? This item over here, this is another item on my list. It's holding the value 3. The index of my list we have talked about in more detail, but the index or the indices is where I am in the list, right? So this item is the value 17. It is at index 0. Here we're at index 3. The item value is 5, right? We have the locations in my list, which is called my indices, where in the list I am. And then the items in my list hold the different values. So let's take a look. For delete, so now we're going to add, well, not add, we're going to talk about removing items from a list. The first one that we're going to look at is delete. Delete is kind of weird. It's not using the dot operator like insert. It's a reserved word in Python. So we're going to start by saying del, and you see how it turns kind of purple there, showing that it's a reserved word. When you want to delete an item from your list, you're going to say del, and then the list. And you can either delete the entire list, which would be done like this, I believe. Let's see, try to print my list now. And what will happen is there's an error because my list is not defined. Maybe my list, ba-bum, does that do it? Woo, okay, that's complaining entirely. I guess you can't delete an entire list, but you can delete an item from a list by saying del my list at an index. So let's delete the item at index 5 from my list. I'll run it, and here we go. Okay, let's run through this line by line just to make sure we're all set. So I created my list. It was 1, 1, 3, 5, 8, and 13. Then I inserted, right? And insert, what it does is it goes to the index for the first argument and then puts this value in that index. So here I had 1, 1, 3, 5, 8, 13. After I inserted, I printed, and my first print says 1, 1, 3, 5, and then at index 4, right? Because I started 0. There's index 0, index 1, index 2, index 3, index 4. At index 4, I added the value, I inserted the value 23, which is why it shows up there. 8 and 13 go afterwards. Here I edited the item at index 4, which is why that 23 changed to a 99. And now finally what we said is del my list at index 5. And what that does is it goes to index 5 of my list, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And it just removes it, which is why when I do my final print statement on line 12, the item that used to be at index 5 is deleted. That 8 is entirely gone. That is what del does. You give it an index to go to, and it just removes it from the list. We've also got pop, which is our next one. Pop is very much like del, except it does a little bit extra. Del is this weird new command that just deletes the item at the index you give it in the list that you give it. What pop does, and it's going to use this dot operator like we saw for insert, is you can say my list dot pop 5. And we can try printing my list again. And maybe I'll say this is going to be like print after popping. What's going to happen here is, let's let's pop item at index 2. When I run it now, so we started from here, right? It was index 0, 1, 2. I popped at index 2. And so the item, which was holding the value 3, gets deleted, right? So it seems very similar to delete, except instead of doing del my list at 5, I say my list dot pop at index 2. The only difference is delete just destroys that. It's just gone. What pop does is it destroys it, but it also, right, we're using a dot operator. It has arguments that we sent, right? We sent 2 as an argument. The return value for the pop function gives you whatever item just got deleted from the list, whatever item got popped from the list. So what I can do is I can create a new variable and say, I don't know, the item, and I can set it equal to mylist.pop. And what now will happen is the item is going to be holding on to whatever we just deleted from my list at index 2. So we saw that we deleted the value 3. So if I print out the item, it should give me the value 3 that I took out of the list. And you can see it right over there. So delete just deletes the item at that index. Pop does the same thing, but it also returns the value that you deleted, so I can hold on to it and then use it for something later if I want to. The final one that we're going to look at is remove. And you know what? I think I'm actually going to do remove in a separate video just because it takes, this video is already long enough. And remove will be a little easier if I use a list instead of made out of numbers, if I use a list with some words in it. So we'll pause the video for here. This is for the delete command, take an item out of your list, and for the pop command, take an item out of your list, but then also potentially store its value as a return statement.